Greetings and welcome to the pod. My name is Mark West. Dean Summers has conquered the triple crown of open water swimming, and as we are recording, is waiting for his chance to swim the Cook Strait between the North and South Islands of New Zealand, which is part of his attack on the Ocean's 7. Only 18 people have completed this series of 7 amazing channel and strait swims, and Dean is 5 in. He has swum the English Channel, the Catalina Strait, the North Channel, Molokai Channel, and the Strait of Gibraltar. He plans to conquer the remaining 2, Cook Strait and the Tsugaru Strait in Japan, by 2020. I started by asking Dean how he got into these amazing endurance swims.
I don't know. It just sort of evolved. I'm born in Fremantle, near the ocean, so I spent most of my childhood growing up on the beaches in Fremantle. And then I went to sea at 16, so I'm a merchant seafarer, and I've always been on, in, or around the ocean. So when I found a squad in around 2013, I was just interested in doing a couple of laps and getting a bit of fitness back. But that just morphed into something a bit bigger.
And so you came to the endurance swimming not as an 18-year-old, but as a 50-year-old.
That's right. I swam a lot as a kid, and in Fremantle, everyone swam in the ocean or in squads. We swam in early morning squads and at school and everything else. But the longest we ever did was a mile, 1,600 kilometres, 1,600 metres. Get a bit confused there. 1,600 metres, and so I just gave it away when I went to work, and I never swam, bits and pieces, but I never really swam until I decided in around 2013 that I needed to get back to it, and I really enjoyed it. I only had great memories of it, and I remember getting into a 50-metre pool and being only able to do about 8 laps, and then I was exhausted. But I built that up 8, 10, and then I found this squad in Andrew Boyd Charlton pool in Sydney City. And you just started hanging around a bunch of people that swam and ever-increasing distances.
Yeah, and it's a big jump from a mile to swimming 5 of the Ocean's 7. And these are massive swims. Can you tell us about the Ocean's 7?
Yeah, well, they're considered to be, and I'm pretty sure they are, the 7 toughest swims in the world that encompass channels. So a lot of people do, and just over the last few years, have done some incredible swims. But these are usually from one continent or crossing a strait or a channel. And they are usually starting with the English Channel, and that's considered by a lot of people as the pinnacle of swimming. But in our group, it's not, but it's still an incredible challenge. And for those that make it, it's an amazing thing. And I think up to date, there's about 1,800 people in history that have swum that channel. That's not that many when you consider all the effort and everything else you have to put in. 1,800 people is not a lot of people. That is 34 kilometres from Dover in the south of England to just south of Calais in France. I did that in 2015, and that took me a little over 13 hours.
Okay, that's still quite an amazing. So if you started swimming seriously again in 2013, in 2 years you trained up to swim the English Channel. That's quite a feat.
It is, and it's funny how it happened. I just started swimming in the Andrew Boyd Charlton with the ABC, and one of the lifeguards said, if you're serious, you should talk to this guy. His name was Vlad, a coach. And so I did, and I cautiously asked him about it. He said, yeah, just come swimming with us, join the squad. And then I realised that there were some people in the squad that were actually training to swim the English Channel, and that just blew me away. I was really impressed that I was swimming in the same pool as people that were doing all of their training in the pool and in the ocean on the weekends to take on what I considered just the Everest of swims. And so I started swimming with them, and then quickly I just fell in step with them, I suppose. You get in the routine of training in the morning, of taking on big challenges on the weekend, coming home exhausted on a Saturday afternoon after a long swim, and just feeling good for the rest of the weekend. So that's where that started. And I drove everyone I knew mad about telling them about these champions that I was swimming with. And it was only 2 years later that I was able to take it on myself.
That's
And then,
great.
and then of course, there's the Catalina Channel is the second one. That's from Catalina Island, a pretty well-known tourist destination off Los Angeles. That's 32 k's off LA. And that is warm water, but a lot of wildlife, very deep water, and it's just on the beautiful. You finish on the beautiful beaches of Los Angeles. The next is the North Channel. That's probably the most intimidating channel, I think. It's about 36 or 37 kilometres from Ireland to Scotland in the Irish Sea, and that is
Cold?
accentuated, I suppose you'd say, by large line-mains jellyfish and the cold. So that's a big consideration for that one.
What would you do if you got caught by one of those jellyfish? There's not a lot you could do, is there?
Well, I was pretty lucky that I only got stung a little bit on my hands, and it was a choppy day, so the jellyfish just went under the surface a few metres, so I was able to get away from them. But they do have the potential to stop a swim and to inject enough venom to absolutely debilitate a swimmer. So you've got to be really careful. And you try to swim around them, but that just is a little impractical. And I tried at first to get around them, but it's just, you've got to get in a rhythm. You've got to lose yourself and give yourself over to long distance swimming, and your mind goes into a meditative state. You can't stop and start. So you just have to cop that sweet sometimes, and it's one of those things that rely on luck. There's a lot of luck in this swimming sport, and one of those in the Irish Channel, in the North Channel, is the jellyfish. And you can prepare for the cold, and you can prepare for the chop and the long day that's ahead of you, but some of the things you can't prepare for.
You must have an amazing support crew then. Do you take your same support crew all around the world to these different swims?
I do, and I'm very lucky that the support crew is mostly my family. So my wife is a swimmer, Kylie. She's a very accomplished swimmer. She's faster than I am and probably a better swimmer than I am, but does not like the cold, so I don't think she'll be approaching any of these channels anytime soon. I also have my son and my daughter, adult son and daughter. They really get into the training. They support me in the long, cold, wintry nights and training in Sydney and around the place. And I've had both of them on different swims at different times.
Okay.
So I'm really lucky. And I also take Vlad, my coach, from time to time, but he hasn't been on all of them, unfortunately. And that's a double-edged sword because, well, it's got advantages because Vlad gets to see all of these channels, meets all of the people involved on the other side of the world, and makes those contacts. So other people want to swim behind me. The next people that come through to these straits, it's a little easier for them in terms of logistics.
And so you were going through the four. I think the next one you were mentioning was the one in Hawaii.
Yes, that's called the Molokai Channel or the Kaiwi Channel, and that's just under 50 kilometres. So it's a big, long swim. And when you consider the geography of Hawaii, it's just a couple of specks of rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So it is very, very isolated. And you fly to the starting line, which is a little intimidating in itself. So you catch a small plane from Oahu, the main island of Honolulu, and then you land in Molokai. You prepare and you start swimming from Molokai back to Oahu. It's a very, very long swim, a lot of wildlife, a lot of weather can kick up very quickly, wind and swell and everything else. So that's a tough one, and the longest of the Ocean 7. There's the Gibraltar Strait. That's a really cool one because it's between Europe and Africa. And so you leave at the south of Spain in a place called Tarifa, and then you swim to Morocco. That's only about 20-odd, maybe 22 kilometres, and it's a lot of cross currents. And of course, it's the Atlantic going into the Mediterranean. So that's got all the things you want in a swim. It's got tough currents. It's got a lot of wildlife, teams of dolphins and sharks and whales and everything else. So we had a good swim across that, but it is a really iconic swim and well deserving one of the Ocean Seven.
Wow. And so what are the other two then that you've got to do, and when are you going to do them, or are you going to do them?
Well, the next one off the rank is the Cook Strait between the North and South Island of New Zealand.
I've caught the ferry across there, and that's, not exactly calm.
You'd be surprised how many people say that they're scared of just taking the ferry across.
Yeah.
And it is, I'm not sure treacherous is the right word, but it is very confused water. And the real art of this one is to pick the right day, the right currents, and try to get across before Mother Nature decides she doesn't want you across there. Just over 100 people have done that swim, and it is really tough because the water streams through. It's like a big funnel. It comes through and hits the mountains on the bottom of the ocean and pushes water up and swirls around. It's not the longest by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's 26 kilometres, but it is a tough, tough swim, and nobody underestimates how tough that swim is. So I'm going to do that on the 1st of December, or sometime. The weather window is between the 1st of December and the 10th of December. So you go to your, wherever these swims start, you get a window, and you sit and wait for the pilot and the observers to discuss it and decide that this is the best chance. Often, the weather doesn't open up, and that happened to me last year when I sat in Wellington in New Zealand waiting for this swim to come about. It just didn't happen. I went home without having a proper swim. So hopefully this 10-day window will give me an opportunity to get across, and I very much look forward to it, and I'm physically ready for it and mentally ready for it.
That sounds amazing. I mean, what a way to see the world.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it'd probably end up being quite expensive if you have a lot of cancelled swims, but it's amazing.
It's
way to see the
enormously
world.
expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the boats cost a lot. Getting your team, getting yourself there, training, accommodation, all the logistics. It is an extensive sport. But the last one is the Tsugaru Strait between Honshu and Hokkaido in Japan. And that, again, is a treacherous strait with this terrible current that comes down from the north and sweeps across the Sea of Japan. I've been to Japan 4 times for this one, and I haven't been able to get across yet. So
Really?
that is my nemesis. And I'm booked in sometime. Well, I've got a tentative booking sometime next year, so that will be my Ocean 7, hopefully.
Wow. And how many people have done the Ocean 7?
I think, well, I know for sure there are 2 Australians that have done it. And that's only very recently. 1 year ago was the first, and then quickly followed the second. So there's only 2 Australians, and probably around 14 around the world, including those 2. So it's a big prize, and it's hard to get and expensive, as I mentioned, but it takes years and years of practice, continually keeping fit, trying to get these slots. It's quite difficult to get the pilots to find the time to slot you in. And the numbers are growing, as I mentioned, exponentially. So it's a sport that's growing every year, and there's going to be such a demand on this Ocean 7. And I think there'll be other swims around the world. Well, I know there are a lot of other swims opening up. And it's not until you get into the sport and talk to like-minded people through social media and on the phone and other ways that you realise there's lots of opportunities for swimming around the world.
So how many kilometres do you log then each week?
Well, it depends. In the lead up to a big swim, you should get up to around 35 or 40 kilometres a week.
Yep.
And that includes long swims on the weekend, sometimes up to 8-hour swims with kayakers, and you have to sort of mobilise your friends and family, and you get people to go with you. And sometimes that's in the middle of the night, as I said, in winter, and sometimes it's on bright sunny days. Sometimes you want it to be choppy and bad weather, so you get a taste of that. And other times you want it to be cold, so you get a conditioning for cold swim. For the North Channel, it's hard to find that cold water, and we travel. We go to Melbourne for cold water camps in the middle of winter, and we find enough cold water there. But we're looking for water down to around 12 and 13 degrees. Hard to find.
Yeah, it's around Sydney, that must be really hard to find. Are you tempted by ice swimming or any of those crazy things?
Well, I've got a couple of friends. Timmy Garrett, for example, has done the Ice Mile.
Yep.
Is working towards the Ice Mile and working with other people to do that, and that is an incredible achievement. I was with a young guy called Ben Freeman. last weekend who told me that, it's one of the toughest things he's done, although he's an amazing swimmer and very accomplished swimmer. Just that 20 minutes in water under 5 degrees is really draining, really hard work. So I'm tempted. I know that I can see the attraction to it, and I can feel the attraction if I'm in cold water. I've never been in under 5 degrees, but I can imagine what it was like. And I think after I've done the 7, I'll be looking to do something like that.
Well, yeah, that's right. You're going to have to keep chasing the next target once you've got the 7, because, I mean, that's pretty high.
I've got a few things in mind, and I've been watching other people around the world. For example, the young woman from the States who just did a quadruple crossing of the English Channel 4 times. Just historic and heroic, and she's quite amazing. Sarah Thomas just didn't even stop, sort of touched the rocks in France, turned around, swam back to England. Wasn't anywhere near a beach, so you're allowed to get out for 10 minutes and sort of catch your breath, but she was nowhere near a beach, so it was just rocks back in England, swam back to France, rocks back in France, and eventually made her way back to the beach in England. So she's just heroic. But at the same time, there was a guy called Cameron Bellamy who swam for 57 hours in warm water. Water as warm as 32 degrees, he reports.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a completely different space to be in. And I don't know how he did it, but he did it across the Bahamas, and an amazing bloke, an incredible swim. So I don't know where the boundary is. I don't know where people say, well, that's just impossible, because as soon as somebody says that's impossible, there's a lineup of like-minded people to say, well, we'll try, and we'll keep on trying until we make it.
Yeah, I mean, well, if I tried something like that, I think I'd hit a few boundaries pretty early on, but I think that's pretty amazing, because not only do you need the endurance, but, I mean, they're not sleeping. It's incredible, you know.
Just sleep deprivation alone is a factor that I don't know how to deal with. How do you stay awake for 57 hours? You couldn't watch television for that long, but moving your arms and cutting across the oceans and putting up with jellyfish stings and hot water and cold water, it is an amazing thing. But you said you'd find boundaries pretty quickly. But if you're trained, you do exactly the same as any of us, because it's not exclusive to supreme athletes. Myself and other people who do this sport are just normal people who get a goal, fix on that goal, and then train towards it. You've got a great coach. All you have to do, I keep on saying, my mantra is just do what the coach tells you. Do it honestly and as hard as you can. And when you arrive on the starting line, you're ready.
And you're ready.
And that's always been the case. Mark, you might be interested in the swim.
I would love to do something like that. I think finding the training time at the moment is hard, but when the kids are 10 years older, that might be the opportunity because I just don't think I've got the time to do the training at the moment.
That's true. It does take a lot of your time, and it's not even time in the water, it's recovery time too. So if you've done an 8-hour swim, starting at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning, you don't want to do much else Saturday afternoon or Saturday night, and then you're sore and tired on Sunday. So it just takes a lot of time and a big slab of your life.
You mentioned earlier, and you've mentioned it on your website, the meditative state that you get into. That must be so important. What does it feel like?
Oh, it's an amazing thing, and I like it a lot, and you can feel yourself getting into it. I've heard a few people describe it. I don't think any of us have really sort of nailed it yet, but it's just a rhythm you get in when your arms are moving at a pace. Mine's about 64 strokes a minute, and you're swimming through the water, and your brain just the rhythm of everything. Even in rough water, you can find a rhythm, and it's almost like the chaos theory, that there's a rhythm inside of all that chaos, and it rocks you, and you can feel it, and you're at one with the water. And then it's almost like that moment just before you fall asleep, and you can feel your head getting nice and soft, and everything around just sort of falling in place, and you just go into meditation. It's a wonderful place to be, and I've had great experiences. One of the most memorable was when we feed every 45 minutes. So that's my feeding schedule. So someone on the boat blows a whistle or waves their hands or something, and then They throw you something on a rope. You're not allowed to touch the boat. They throw you liquid food on a rope. You take that down and get back into it again. So you don't really break out of that meditative state if you can do it right. Don't have to talk to anybody. You just get the bottle, drink. 15 seconds later, you're back into the rhythm again. But my coach, who I trust, Vlad, I trust absolutely, said, stop, have a feed. And then I started swimming, and 5 minutes later, he said, not even 5 minutes later, he said, stop and have a feed. And I had a bit of an argument with him because I said, I trust you, and now you're trying to stop me every 5 minutes for a feed. He said that was more than 45 minutes ago. So a big slab of time was just taken away. And I didn't feel like I was hard pushed. I wasn't getting stung. Maybe all those things were happening, but I was just cruising through the water. I liken it to being almost a cheat because, an hour here and an hour there certainly shortens the swim.
That's amazing, especially in rough water, because I could imagine you need to have your wits about you if you've got lion's mane jellyfish and whatnot all around you. But to get into that state under such intense pressure, that's something.
Well, I look for it now. I really search for that state, and I can do it on my own. I find it difficult when I've got other swimmers around me because I'm not exactly sure what speed I go when I go okay, so I go on the required speed. But I look and I just want to be in that space. And it's just really quite beautiful. It's at one with the ocean. So, sometimes I can find it and other times I can't. When you can't, it's a bit frustrating. You just have to accept that that's not the day for it.
I guess open water swimming, or at least this long distance swimming, is something you want to keep doing for the rest of your life if you can tap into that state.
Well, it is in that state. I suppose the next step is to find that state outside of the water, and then, I'm sure that's meditation, some sort of deep meditation.
Yeah.
But I've tried meditation once or twice. It's hard for me because I get a little bit distracted like everybody else. But I'm sure it's just the rhythm of the water. It's just the constant slap of your own arms on the water. It's the bubbles blowing out. You can hear the bubbles. Remembering, Mark, that all the other senses at one stage or another are taken away from you. If you're swimming at night, which a lot of our swims in fact, all the channels take some part of the night swimming, then usually it's dark. For mine, it's been overcast. There's no stars. And you don't have the sense of sight for most of the time. You have a little bit of a light somewhere else, but you're just lifting your head to breathe and you see a light and then back in the water again. So it's all but taken that sense away. Of course, you can't smell. You can't taste, or you can taste the salt, so that's sort of taken away from your mouth all the time. You can't hear other than just the bubbles. So you're really sort of shutting all of these other avenues off. And you only got your own mind, your own thoughts, and those few parts of the senses that are left.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that before, that the lack of senses and combining that with focusing on the rhythmic breathing. I can see how it's very similar to meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you do the logistics for all these swims? When you're saying you bring your family over and all the rest of it, but how do you find pilots? How do you find the people to help you who know the oceans and when to go and when not to go, etc., when you're going to places you've never been before?
So each of these channels have an association. Some have two. In the English Channel, there's two associations. Each of those have boats and pilots, captains, and observers. And so when you want to do one of these swims, you have to contact the association. You have to try to get a slot to swim. In the English Channel now, it's booked out for 2 years, Mark, so you might want to check in now and you'll get 2030 or something. But they're taking bookings, I think, 3 years out now. But they're all quite similar. And then you get your window and then you just prepare. You go to a good coach and you prepare training so that that's going to bring you up to the peak physical condition for that day. And it might be a year down the track. And so you've just got to stick to that training regime. The feeding regime, you have to get your nutrition, which is an incredibly important part of swimming. You have to get all the people around you that can feed information into you. That's why our squad is so good, because it's quite unique in that any given day in our squad, you've probably got 10 people that have swum the English Channel and other channels and Triple Crowns and all those sort of achievements. So we're very lucky in our squad. And I think Blad's got something like 58 people across the English Channel, which must be some sort of record.
Wow.
I think he's got 7 Triple Crowners and all those sort of things. So that's a great resource for us. And then you've got to book flights, accommodation, and all the other things And then when you land in your starting point, you sort of got to give yourself over to the pilot and the association, get some advice for them. And then it's a matter of saying each of them will give you a window, like a week. In fact, once very lucky to get 10 days in New Zealand, but usually they're about a week. And you just stand by and ring them every day, or they'll ring you. And then one night, hopefully they say we start at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you prepare everybody and everything to meet the boat down at the harbour, and away you go.
Wow. And you mentioned the Triple Crown of swimming. So what's that?
So it's a Triple Crown of 3 swims, and that starts with the English Channel. It can be in any order. Catalina Channel, as I mentioned before, between Catalina Island and Los Angeles, and a circumnavigation of Manhattan Island. That's not one of the channels, but it's a required swim for the Triple Crown.
It's long as well.
It's a long way. It's more than 50 kilometres, and it's up the filthy East River. So you start at different places, but for mine, we started at the bottom of Manhattan, the bottom tip, straight into the East River, up through the Harlem River, spat out at the top into the Hudson River, and then the Hudson River all the way back down to the starting point.
Have you got sick from any swims like that, swimming through sewage or anything dodgy?
If you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick in the Manhattan swim.
Right.
But no, I didn't. I took a lot of precautions. I got a lot of jabs for things. I was very careful. It's not always that filthy. I think it's particularly filthy after a heavy rain. But I was lucky the weather was good, and we went around without too much problems.
That's cool.
There's a lot of disgusting things floating in the water, and they call them the Harlem whitefish, and they're condoms that are floating all around the place. I don't know. They must have a very active nightlife, I think, the New Yorkers, because they're everywhere. And there's all sorts of, crap floating in the water, if you like. I think the Hudson's a lot cleaner because that runs quite quickly, and it comes from, upstate New York, so it's a lot cleaner.
Do you ever, just go off Coogee and just swim north as far as you can, or do you always do it with a pilot or in organised ways, or how do you do it?
Well, I sometimes swim to Bondi and back on my own, so that's about 10 k's. I'm very careful because I don't want people thinking that that's just easy done and away they go, because you can get stuck halfway up and there's rocks there. It's pretty unforgiving. But I'm with a squad, and we just swim on the weekends all over the metropolitan beaches. But we have proper organised swims on Saturdays, and they usually include kayakers, small boats sometimes in races, and we make sure that safety is paramount. So we take every safety precaution now. Timmy and I do a lot of swims. Timmy's very experienced, I'm very experienced, and we mitigate as much risk as we can possibly do. I don't believe that sharks are a problem. People like to exaggerate those. We see them sometimes around the place. We see dolphins and turtles and seals and all sorts of things. It's a beautiful, beautiful coastline. Increasingly, we're seeing a lot more plastics in the water, and that's something we all should be alarmed about. But I can't see too much changing in our society to fix that. But, the dangers are overestimating your capacity, your capability. I think not understanding the weather and how that can whip up very quickly, not understanding the wind directions coming from different points and how that will affect you, how the waves radiate off the cliffs and back again. So once you understand all that, then you greatly reduce the risks. To help, we try to get a kayaker on every swim, because that's very important to give you food, to be with you, to have some form of communication, and to be visible too from all around the place, because you can do everything you want. I'm not going to stop a boat coming running over you. I know that for sure. But you just got to, as I say, mitigate. Timmy and I now agree to take a big orange bubble. We tow that. It's not easy, but we tow it. We put some food, sometimes communication like a phone in the back, and we just tow a small inflatable bubble up and back with us. And the lifeguards are very happy that we do that, because we're much more visible to everybody.
That's probably good resistance training or something as well. Carry a few more
Well, it
kilos
helps.
around.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the reason we really had to refocus. Timmy and I and a mate called Victor refocused on that. Is that we went out swimming on a. It wasn't particularly bad, but wasn't a real pleasant day in the middle of winter last year. And the shark boat that was responsible for laying the shark net ran over us. We didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
We didn't hear it. He didn't see, apparently, 3 very brightly covered caps of people swimming in the water, close enough to the beach and the point, just ran right over the top of us. And it's just a miracle none of us were killed. And
Yeah.
I still can't believe it today that we escaped serious injury. So we constantly worry about that. And, we constantly know that our friends and family are worried about us. So, and some of us got little kids, so you have a big responsibility to them. It doesn't stop your sport, but it makes you think of the safest and most reliable way to do it.
Have you ever been in a particularly dicey situation where you've wondered how you're going to get out of it?
Well, that was pretty dicey, having a 20-ton boat run over you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a couple of other occasions when I've miscalculated and washed up on rocks and things like that. Those are things you don't repeat. It's a lesson you learn very quickly, and I know not to do that again. And so very lucky on a couple of occasions. But as I say, we're with experienced coaches, most of the time with kayakers, and on the odd occasion we go and we do everything we possibly can to make ourselves safe.
Yep. Now, of course, to swim the English Channel and whatnot, there are rules. You're not allowed to wear wetsuits. You can't touch the side of the boat. Can you tell me about all these rules and how you train for those rules?
Yeah, I don't know who sat down and came up with them, but they were pretty ruthless. So it's just called the English Channel Rules, and they're now applied right across the board. And some of them don't really make that much sense and add an element of danger that's not required, in my view. Not complaining about them, but you have to know about them. And that is that you've got to start from a dry land. You've got to be seen for the boat and the observer. So each boat carries an observer to make it an official swim. And they have to see you standing clear of the water. And then they blow the horn on the boat. You're clear to go and you start to swim. And when you get to the other side, you have to scramble up, sometimes on rocks, sometimes on a cliff face. I've done that before. And if you're lucky, on a beach, to stand clear of the water for the swim to be finished. And it's not until you're actually clear of water that the siren goes off and it's finished. That's a tough rule. And I think that could do with a bit of revisiting, because if you swam 50 kilometres and you're right there touching the rock, and I don't think there's any need. It's not a rock climbing sport. This is a swimming sport.
That's right. Yeah.
But they're the rules, and so we abide by them. Sometimes we take a bit of bark off just to remember those swims. While you're in the swim, you can only wear racing bathers like Speedos or the like. You can only have a cap and goggles, so you can't have any other clothes to assist your buoyancy or anything else. So you can't wear a rashie, for example. You can't wear wetsuits, of course, and that's all you can have. That's a tough one. The other one is you can't touch the boat. You can't have another swimmer with you that's going to go ahead, and so you can draft behind them.
Yep. There's
a whole lot of things you have to consider to make sure. Some even put a breathalyzer on you before you start.
Really?
I'd hate to think getting on the booze and then swing a channel.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, drinking is particularly performance enhancing.
That's right. There must be some reckless people in that swim.
Yeah.
So it's pretty tight, and the observer watches you every minute of the swim, and so it's like a 20-hour swim. That's a long time. They have two observers sometimes, and 2 captains and 2 mates on the ship, on the boat, and away you go. But you cannot do any of those things, including hanging on the boat when you have a feed. The feed has to be thrown to you on a rope, and that can be any form, but the easiest way, of course, is different things inside fluid, like maltodextrin or some protein powder or something like that. And you can stop as long as you like to feed, but every second is pushing you back usually, so you just got to feed really quickly and then just get back into it again. I use a rule of feed every 45 minutes and then try feed maximum for 45 seconds. Quite often it's shorter than that, but that's the maximum I allow myself.
And I guess they're very carb dense materials to get it into you.
There's sugars and carbs and proteins, and sometimes you have a little bit of dry stuff, like a little corner of white bread, and other people have different things just to break the monotony and make you feel a bit better. Quite often people vomit, and then you lose all that nutrition in your stomach, and so you've got to try to top that up. If your nutrition drops in a swim, it's very, very difficult to sort of build that level back up again. So it's something to be very wary of.
Yeah, and if it is warm, you do sweat. People don't think that you sweat when you swim, but you still lose water.
Absolutely, and dehydration is a very, very important thing and something everyone's watching out for. So when you stop, the whole crowd, everybody on the boat's looking over and asking you questions. If it's cold or there's danger of getting really tired, they'll be asking you personal questions. What's your name? What's her name? What's his name? Things like that, so that they can judge that you're still lucid and you're still okay. That's pretty valuable too. But you're right, dehydration is a killer out there. So you've got to make sure that you take that powder with the right amount of fluids, of water.
And going to the toilet, I imagine, is as rudimentary as I imagine it to be?
Oh, well, in cold water, it's quite pleasurable, actually. It's your only chance to get a little bit of warmth.
Yeah, right. Yes. Well,
you just pee as you're going along, and it's a learned art. And you just don't even break stride. You just keep on going, and it takes a little bit of concentration, but it's an important thing. And the observers often, in fact, always ask, have you peed? Because if you haven't, then you're in trouble. There's something wrong with your system. So you must report that, and it's got to be happening, or else you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
You raise a lot of money as part of your endeavours, and this dating back to your trade union expertise. Can you tell us about seafarers and what you do?
Yeah, I'm a merchant seafarer by trade, and then I moved into the trade union that represents those workers, and now I'm working in the international sphere, working with International Transport Workers Federation to protect workers' rights around the world, and we focus heavily on the maritime sector. Now, international seafarers, there's a little over 1 million of them, generally are treated pretty poorly. They're from developing nations. The way that the industry has, I was going to say evolved, it's probably not the right word, the opposite of that, has gone backwards, is that ships have very small crew, are open to exploitation with their registration, and seafarers have a very, very tough time of it. We see a lot of injured seafarers, a lot of mental health problems with seafarers, huge amount of suicides, misreporting of those, no investigations of those. So it's like the Wild West, and seafarers deserve more than that. They're carrying the entire world's economy every day of the week around on ships, and it's off their backs. A lot of people make a lot of money, and yet they're paid badly, intimidated, exploited, and so I raise money for seafarers' mental health, and there's a great organisation that started in Australia and now is international called Hunterlink, and they provide services for seafarers in a multitude of languages, mainly the main languages of the seafarers that we know of, Filipinos, Indians, Ukrainians, Sri Lankans and others, and they can get on the phone free and talk to these counsellors straight up, and it's been incredibly successful, and we think have saved a hell of a lot of lives and made people feel a little bit better while they're working away at sea. Bearing in mind, these guys are at sea for the best part of a year at a time, away from their families, in a harsh environment, cruel conditions, and the mental health problems are amplified in that area. So I'm in their territory. I see ships in the background in all of my swims. Quite often big container ships come very close to us, tankers and other sorts of ships. And there's a real connection there, a real connectivity. And so I put the word out, usually amongst the Australian maritime workers who have been incredibly generous. The employers not that generous, but they put money in, and I've raised, I can't remember, I think it's around $50,000 for this particular case. So it's Hunterlink, and they do fine things. They're based in Newcastle. But as I said, seafarers all around the world can access them just by finding the number on the internet and speaking to someone in their own language. A great asset. And the other thing that I was quite proud of was a Burmese. I was doing some work in Burma, and a Burmese widow came to me and asked if I could help get her some money because her husband had been at sea for 17 months. had not been able to send any of his pay home, even though it was pretty poor pay, but he wasn't able to send any home because of all the corruption in his country, even in the banks and through the military junta and all that sort of business. So he had the captain hold all of his wages for 17 months. And when he died, which was not investigated, on the ship in Korea or Japan, I can't remember which, they just took all that money back and they sent a small shoebox of his belongings back to his wife and 2 little kids. So that was just a tragedy, and really, shows me how important the work that we do is. So I took it upon myself to raise money. I think it was only about $10,000 US, but that's a hell of a lot to her. And in Burma, that's probably the difference between poverty, living on the streets, and being able to at least have some sort of dignified existence for the short term, but the union that we set up there is going to help her in the future as well. So that was a real personalised thing, and she put the babies in my, the little kids in my arms, and I thought, God, I've got to do something about this. That's as best I could, and helping the union develop over there is another way that helps not only her and the kids, but everybody else that will come through from Burma as well.
That's amazing. So what's the best way to sponsor you? Can we sponsor a swim, or is it just go to Hunterlink and follow the links?
Well, Hunterlink, I'm sure, has got a place to donate. But when I set up the last one, not for New Zealand, I haven't got enough time, but for the last one, which will be my Ocean 7, I'll make a big deal of it and encourage people to donate and swim for seafarers, and hopefully we can get some more money coming in. We do fund Hunterlink as well, so that funding comes in from the ITF. But of course, that's a lot of people. They need a lot of assistance, and it's like a lot of other very good causes in Australia and around the world. There's never enough money.
That's right. Yeah, there is never enough money. So what's next? So the Cook Strait is next. Are you going to do Tim's marathon swim from down the coast near Sydney?
I have to. Tim hasn't given me any alternative, so I've got to. And I've done that swim before too, twice. So I like it. It's a beautiful swim. I can't remember the dates of it, but that's from Palm Beach to Manly, and then I know he's going to push it out to Palm Beach to Bondi. So that'll probably be the longest organised swim in the country. In fact, I know it will be, because now the biggest race, in fact, the biggest open water race in the world is in Western Australia. So it's from Fremantle or Cottesloe to Rottnest Island. It's a great swim too, but there's nothing on the East Coast. So Tim's developing this great swim, Palm Beach to Manly, beautiful, picturesque, clean water all the way down, and I'll certainly be participating in that.
Are you going to run for a couple of 100 kilometres and cycle for a couple of 100 kilometres too, like Tim? Or
I'll run if the tiger's chasing me, but Timmy does, and he does some incredible things. So channels aren't good enough for him. He's got to tack on an ultra long distance run and cycle before and afterwards, and he's doing some amazing stuff.
And so after Cook Strait, there's hopefully that'll happen, and then there's Japan next year.
Well, we speak in very positive terms, Mark. Cook Strait's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And then the pressure will be on the Japanese Association to find me another window, bearing in mind this will be my 5th visit to northern Japan, and they're good guys. I know that they're going to support me getting up there, and I'm going to give that the final crack, get across and have the Ocean 7.
Can you do that year-round, or is it just too cold in winter, or the wind's particularly bad at any particular time of year?
All these channels have a season, and so in Japan it's out of season now, but it starts very cold. Well, not very cold, probably 14 or 15, and it can get right up to 25 or 26. So the temperature is one thing. That big current that comes down from the north comes in from the northwest into the southeast. It's a terrible bloody thing that's got me once or twice. That is seasonal as well. And also you've got typhoon seasons, which throw all the currents and all the water out of whack completely, and I've suffered from those as well. So the last time I was up, I think we had three typhoons surrounding the swim area, and that just happened. And the Japanese fishermen up there that take you across, they're great guys, but they live in a very isolated area in a place called Tapi, and you can see Hokkaido on a clear day across across the strait, but getting there is a completely different story. They've got specialised, very narrow gutted boats, and they're squid fishermen and also tuna fishermen. My last captain caught a 260 kilo tuna a couple of weeks before he went up one time. It was incredible. And so that's a great swim. It is good. I haven't finished it yet, but you see a lot of things. I've swum with a small school of tuna, sea snakes, all sorts of other wonderful things. It's an incredible swim.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Like that, I wish you good luck, because I think that'll be just amazing. And then to be just one of really a handful of people that have done this, that's incredible.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it, particularly after all the years that I've been banging away at it. And I've been sort of training for all that time too. So I look forward to a bit of time off and then consider what else I'm going to do, but certainly I won't stop.
Yeah, what would be on the list then? We talked about ice miles, possibly. What other... I mean, there's always somewhere else to swim, right? There's always somewhere else to swim.
Well, there is.
Would you want
It's a big world, and there's a lot of coast, and there's a lot of, islands to swim to and around and through. So I'm talking to people, and I'm trying to sort of map around the place. I want to do something nobody else has done, and I think that's probably the logical step after this. You really want to distinguish yourself and try to find some other place, and then see if someone will chase you and try to do the same sort of thing. Yep. So I haven't got anything firm in mind yet, but I've just got a couple of ideas rattling around my head. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
No, that sounds...
But, the wonderful thing about swimming is you just put yourself in this environment. I just mentioned, where else would you swim with a school of tuna going your way? And I've got some strange memories of that. Where else would you swim in, where you've got warm, crystal clear water? And we've got something called bioluminescence that, if you're very lucky, you can experience. And so that's when the water is still and the season's right, and you can put your hand in the water, and this motion of your hand excites the plankton or whatever it is in the water, and it just lights up in beautiful blues and greens, and it's like a Star Wars movie as this stuff drifts at night into your goggles and sort of explodes lightly onto your goggles. Those sort of things you just don't see anywhere else. And the ocean is just a unique environment that you have to be in for a long time and experience that. So it's one thing reaching these goals, but it's another thing just being completely immersed in a different world.
Yeah, I mean, that you talked earlier about shutting off your senses, but then to have that one turn back on and see bioluminescence, that's not something you see every day.
No, it isn't. And I've seen it once or twice, but I haven't been that lucky to see it for a long time on a swim, because you could just get lost in that, just watching it, sometimes hour after hour, just beautiful splashes of light in an otherwise black environment. When I did Catalina, some very good friends of mine, Rachel and Mike, did it as a tandem. So both of them wanted to swim and record a solo. So they did, husband and wife, great people. They swam across Catalina, and we were all together. I was due to swim the next day. On their swim, it was beautiful and calm, and they had these wonderful experiences with dolphins and seals and things, and bioluminescence for hours and hours and hours. 24 hours later, I swam the same swim, and you'd swear it was in a different ocean, because it was rough and squalls coming through and people getting tipped out of kayaks. It was quite extraordinary, but we laugh about that quite often.
You're not tempted to go back and do it again then? Try and see it all?
No, well, none of those swims I want to do again. Some people do. Some people have done the English Channel, multiple times. And I just like the idea of doing it once, and there's so much more to do that I get quite excited about other opportunities.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, there's so many places you could swim. You could swim around Norfolk Island. You could swim, I don't know, there's a million places you could go. It's amazing. This is one of the great things about the sport, I guess.
Well, we get a buzz quite often just swimming around Wedding Cake Island in the middle of Coogee Bay. And for people that I haven't done, I've had the privilege of swimming with some people that aren't very strong swimmers just around that. And it's a 2K swim from the beach out around the island and back in again. But always you experience something, you see something spectacular. And just to swim around the back of the island, which spooks some people out for any irrational reason, is just a beautiful thing. And they talk about it for weeks afterwards, and they really are excited about it. So I just encourage people to do that and go with other strong swimmers. You don't need safety support for a 2K swim as long as someone's capable. and you stick with them and you talk them through it, it's a great experience. So you don't have to travel around the world. That swim costs nothing, and people can take home a great experience for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I'm going to do that in 2 weeks, actually. The Coogee swim's on, the ocean swim. I'm going to go out and do that.
Are you really? That's fantastic.
Yeah. I really love the Coogee swim. I missed it. I didn't do it last year for various reasons, so I'm really keen to do it. I think it's great. And you do it at different times. Sometimes you can see the island. Sometimes you can barely see it. Sometimes it's big and bouncy out the back. Other times it's like swimming in a lake. It's a really nice swim.
Well, I live right near it, and every single day that island looks different. And every single day there's a different feature to it. And even us who have swum for a couple of years now, you can swim in front of it and see turtles, and there's sheltered different ways the waves come around it and wrap around the inside. It is quite spectacular. But the problem with that race is that it is a race, and so you get out and you race around, you go around the buoys and race back, and you have a great time, and the beach is alive with anticipation and excitement. But the other side is doing it nice and slowly and stopping and looking at the fish and looking at something else, and there's reef and rocks all around it. Some of those rocks between the island and the southern point of Coogee look like a bricklayer's laid it. They're just these great big symmetrical slabs underneath that for whatever reason don't have, I suppose it's Sydney sandstone. They don't have anything growing on them, and they're just beautiful, big round pebbles the size of large footballs. It is a beautiful place, and that's why I live in Coogee, in fact.
Yeah. Well, they don't let you get too close to the island in the swim, in the race. So that's one advantage of doing it by yourself or with some friends. I guess you can get a bit closer if you know what you're doing.
If you know what you're doing, yeah, because you can get in a bit of grief pretty quickly if you don't know the island.
Yes, I'll still steer clear of it, I think. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great.
Oh, well, I might see you down there. I just want to talk about sharks for a minute, because everyone's fascinated by sharks, and when you swim, people say the first thing they say isn't, what about the cold? What about the distance? What about jellyfish? They say, aren't you afraid of sharks? And it really quite, gets under my skin a bit, because sharks are the most misunderstood, badly treated animals in the ocean. And we know they're under threat, and governments react, hysterically to get votes and drum lines, kill the sharks and all these sort of things. But, the most dangerous thing I've ever had is the shark boat. Is a Mr. Magoo captain on the shark boat. It's not the sharks. And we see them often, but I had the most wonderful experience when I was swimming Molokai. And so we leave Molokai Island. We've flown there. The boat sails across. It took them 5 hours to get from Honolulu back to Molokai. And we start swimming, and it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a bit rough, a bit choppy. There's a bit of a squall coming through, but that's nothing, no big deal. Start swimming at 5. It gets dark around 6:30 or 7, and having a great swim. It's a bit tough, and I find out later that I've been swimming in one spot for a few hours, but I didn't know that, so it didn't worry me. And then I'm thinking it's a bit cool, so I'll be glad when the sun comes up in the morning. I'll have it on my back. I've worked out the direction. I'll have it on my back, and the water will become clear, and it'll be really nice. But when the sun did come up around 6:30 in the morning, so I'd been going for more than 12 hours, feeling good. I've got a kayak. I've got 3 kayakers taking shifts in kayaking next to me, and I've got the boat some way off, maybe 500 metres off. They search for currents, put the boat inside the currents and see what they feel like, and they steer you accordingly. The sun came up on my back, the water just started to get clear, still a little bit murky because it was only dawn, and there's this little pest of a shark came at the surface level. I could see it coming from my right-hand side, came towards me and just sort of hung around me, but I remember it was like snarling its teeth. It was just a pest, it wasn't threatening me, and I just kept my eye on that. And I looked around at one side, and it was completely hiding itself behind the kayak, but it wasn't any concern. But then I looked directly beneath me, and there was a big, big shark. And I didn't know it at the time, but the Hawaiians told me it was a oceanic white tip, and they're pretty notorious in that area. But they said, what? I said, there's a shark down here, and the kayaker could see it. He said, that's the same size as my kayak. That's a 14-foot shark. I said, oh. I said, well, he might have been there all night. Well, what do you want to do? Do you want to get out of the water? I don't think so. I've risked a lot of money. If you get out of the water, the swim's finished, and you have to go back. There's no coming back from that. So no, I'll keep on swimming for a while. Then we had some little chats, be careful of this, be careful of that. In reality, if the shark wanted to do you harm, it would do it in the flash of in the blink of an eye, and that'll be all over. But this shark was just underneath me, maybe 10 feet underneath me, and just cruising along gently, side by side. And I say she, I don't know if it was a boy or a girl, but I just like to think it was a she. She was just so gentle and deliberate and shadowing me the whole way across. And then I suppose after about an hour of this, the shark decided it wanted to come up a little bit closer to me and get a closer look, not threatening, and I could just feel it coming up. But we carry something called a shark shield, and it's a length of electrical cable that's about 1 metre long, and we tow it off the back of the kayak. It's chargeable, and so the shark shield has a radius that will deflect sharks, should not scare them away, but deflect them. I watched that shark come up much less than 10 feet under me. It's a 14-foot shark, so it was like getting close to a bus. And then it just gave a flinch when it got inside the field of the shark shield. It gave a flinch, and it just went off, and then just come back out just outside the field of the shark shield. It was an amazing experience. There was mahi that was swimming a little bit off to the side, so they could see the shark, and they didn't want to get anywhere near that, but I think they were fascinated. I could see big manta rays further deep. It was crystal clear water. But this shark just wanted to accompany me, I suppose it was inquisitive. I stopped for a feed, and they put extra shark shields, another one on the bow of the kayak, one on the stern. They hung one over the side of the boat, trying to give me a bigger field. I don't think the shark was too worried about that. But when I fed, very quickly, trying to keep eye contact with the shark, it just came up to the water next to me, next to the boat, and just basked on top of the water so everybody could see it, and just stopped there while I fed. And then when I started to swim off again, she just come back underneath me and resumed her position. And then we swam off again. From time to time, over the next 5 hours, that shark was directly under me. It was the most, almost, people describe dolphins and whales and things like that as almost a spiritual experience. And that's exactly what it was. But this was a different level. This wasn't a chirpy, happy, squeaking dolphin. This was one, according to Jacques Cousteau, one of the most dangerous sharks in the ocean. And they're endangered as well. But it was the most beautiful thing, and they love deep water. So when we got closer to Oahu, there's a big shelf that goes around the island, and that water goes from something like, I think it was 2,000 metres up to about 90 metres. When we got to that shelf, the shark just swam off, and she was gone. But that was an incredible 5-hour swim with her, and I'll never forget that. And it just makes me even more convinced that sharks just don't wait for human beings to get in the water and they want to eat them. They're there, they're inquisitive, they're highly intelligent. They know the difference between a human being and a fish, and they're just curious.
That's so incredible too, because as fast as you may be, you're not as fast as a shark. So that shark was very deliberately just hanging back and
that's right,
following you. I mean, that's beautiful story, isn't it?
It is, and just to think that it just basked. It sort of knew that I was feeding. It just basked there until I was ready to go again. Okay, let's go again. And away we went.
I wonder what it was doing. Oh, it's really interesting.
I'm convinced. I thought about it for a very long time. Certainly 5 hours I thought about it. I didn't take my eyes off it.
Yeah.
But I think it was just doing something, just having, a little day out. I just think that it was curious, it's super intelligent, and it was just trying to work me out, but never aggressive, not for a second. And I didn't feel that aggression either. You get a feel from things around you, and I never felt threatened, never felt intimidated by that thing.
That's so
as far as outswimming a shark, that's what Timmy and I talk about. I just have to outswim Timmy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting that the shark shield had an effect, but again, I imagine if a 14-foot shark actually wanted you, I don't think a shark shield's doing much.
I absolutely agree, and I've since learned there's another shark called the cookie cutter shark, which I'd never heard of before until after that swim. And they're now become notorious in that swim because they're only less than a metre long. So they're a small shark, but they come up from the deep and they just head straight up at their prey, usually a whale or a seal. And their mouth opens completely flat and they hit their prey. Oh. And at the same time they hit, they twist and they take a complete symmetrical chunk out of their prey, like the cookie cutter suggests, and then swims away with it. And there's been 3 swimmers that have had an experience with those cookie cutter sharks. I'm glad I didn't know about them. Yes. But one of the conditions in Hawaii is that you have to have a shark shield somewhere near you, usually on the kayak. So it doesn't appear to have been very effective in that instance.
Yeah, I guess you take it, and any slight increase in the chance that you won't get attacked is good. But I don't think there's any. If a shark wants you, they're going to get you. I mean, it's their ocean.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed because I asked my wife Kylie to throw me. We had a little GoPro on board, and when I stopped and fed, just throw me the GoPro. She did, and then I swam with one arm for 2 or 3 minutes with a GoPro pointing to the shark, and I thought I'd captured this on film, and then later on I found out I hadn't managed to turn the GoPro on properly. Which is pretty disappointing, but everyone saw it. I'll never forget it, and it's burned into my memory as one of the most beautiful experiences of open water swimming that I've had.
So you didn't hallucinate it after 12 hours of swimming?
Well, after 20 hours, that swim took a lot more, so it took 20 hours all up. And at the end, I was hallucinating, but that started at 5 o'clock at night. I'd already spent the whole day traveling and getting over there, so it's like 20 hours plus the 12 hours beforehand. So I've learned a lesson, but I was hallucinating again. But the shark certainly wasn't a hallucination.
Wow. How long did you sleep after that? You sleep for a week?
I couldn't get to sleep after that. You've got adrenaline, the excitement. You've got a lot of sugars and maltodextrins in your body.
Yeah,
so
you're probably wired.
You are. So when you eventually do sleep, you sleep pretty deeply.
Wow. That's a great story.
Yeah, I just love it. I love telling it. Not to say that sharks are out and be careful of them, just to say that, just think about sharks in a different way. Think about just how intelligent sharks are and how long they've been around. And, they're just not some stupid man-eating beast that's waiting for you to dip your toe in the ocean. And it exhausts me, and I just resent people continue going on about it because they should get out and experience these things themselves.
Well, it's interesting that, was it last year, the Rottnest swim, they did pull everyone out of the water halfway through the race because there was a shark sighted.
Yeah, it was sighted by one of our own swimmers in our squad, who we continually go crook at because a lot of people didn't finish. But there are other people that see small sharks and don't tell the organisers for that reason, because it's hysterical. There's 1,000 people in the water in that race. What are your chances? First, a shark wanting to attack anybody, and then you copying it. I just don't think that's happening. I do acknowledge, there are shark attacks and people do have bad experience. They get bitten, but, it's the chances of getting hit by a car are much worse. Yeah. So you have a look at the Easter road toll and the Christmas road toll. People are happy enough to get in the car 5 minutes later, but they won't get in the water for a week after a shark sighting. It's irrational.
Yeah. I mean, Jaws has a lot to answer for, I think.
Yes, it sure does. I think each swim is like a chapter. And so even the build-up to it, the camaraderie around being in that squad, each of these swims is not on me. It's the squad, and it's a coach, and it's a family, and it's all of those things go into it, put you on the starting line in a very positive way. You can't go doing these, you're negative, you're scared about something, if you're worried, if you don't think you've covered all the bases. So you've got your nutrition right, you've got your family around, you've got everyone settled, everyone understands the risks and what you're going to do and how you mitigate those risks. And so it's just a real team effort, a team sport, even though at the time it comes down to a few hours on your own. You're never really on your own. And you have to acknowledge how valuable having a squad like ours is. I know I have some mates, particularly in Germany, that are great swimmers, but they train on their own, and I don't know how they do it. And some of them train in a 25-metre pool There's not much
Wow.
proper coastline in Germany, but they do it and they swim really, really well, and they're strong, accomplished swimmers. So I just think I've got it pretty easy here in Sydney.
Yeah, I often think ocean swimming is kind of a perfect extroverted introvert sport, or is it an introverted extrovert sport or something? I mean, in the end, you're on your own swimming, but often you're swimming with a pack of people, or you've got a team with you as well. So it's obviously
it's the most egalitarian. It's the most egalitarian experience you can have, because there's nowhere to bling. You wear speedos and goggles and a cap, maybe. There's nothing can show off. Like triathlons have got the best bike. Triathletes have got the best bikes, the best shoes, and all this sort of stuff. And other sports have got bling around them. But this doesn't care if you're old or young, fat or skinny. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Everyone's just judged on how you swim and how you embrace the squads and the swims on the weekends. It's a beautiful thing, and it's something I'll be doing for as long as I possibly can.
That's all we've got time for in this edition of the pod. Thank you so much to Dean Summers for taking such a long time to chat to us about his ocean swimming conquests and his attack on the Ocean 7. Hopefully by the time you've heard this, the weather gods will have smiled upon him and he will be out swimming at the Cook Strait in New Zealand. If you'd like to follow Dean's progress, get over to our website at www.thepodpodcast.net. That's www.thepodpodcast.net. And from there you'll find links to Dean's homepage, Dean's Facebook and Insta, and also you'll be able to sponsor Seafarers if you choose to do so. Thanks again, my name's Mark West. I'll catch you next time on The Pod.